Hello, and welcome back to Science Lullaby. Get yourself comfortable. Pull the blanket a little closer. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears, and let your breathing slow down into something easy and natural. You don't have to do anything right now. Nowhere to be. Nothing to solve. Just settle in and let your mind drift gently with me tonight, down through the soft blue darkness of the ocean. Because tonight we're visiting one of the most extraordinary creatures that has ever existed on this planet. Not a creature from science fiction, not something conjured in a laboratory, but a real, living, breathing, thinking animal that has been quietly going about its business in the world's oceans for hundreds of millions of years, long before the dinosaurs ever arrived. Long before most of what we consider complex life even existed on land. Tonight we're spending time with the octopus, and by the time you drift off to sleep tonight, you're going to know 100 things about them. 100 carefully chosen, fully verified, genuinely astonishing facts that will change the way you think about intelligence, about life, and about what it really means to have a mind. So take a slow, deep breath, let it out, and let's go. Part 1. Ancient aliens of the deep, origins and evolution. Fact number 1. The octopus is old. Genuinely, staggeringly old in a way that is difficult to fully absorb. The oldest known fossil ancestor of the modern octopus dates back approximately 330 million years. And that specimen, discovered in Montana's Bear Gulch limestone formation and described in scientific literature in 2022, already looked remarkably like what we might recognize today. Imagine that. 330 million years ago, there was something crawling across the seafloor that we would look at and immediately say, yes, that is an octopus. At that point in Earth's history, dinosaurs hadn't arrived yet. Life on land had barely gotten started, still dominated by primitive reptiles and early amphibians, and yet there, in the ancient seas, the octopus lineage had already been developing and refining itself for a very, very long time. Fact number 2. The previously known oldest octopus fossil before the 2022 discovery was a creature called Paulsapia mesinensis, which lived approximately 296 million years ago and was found in what is now Illinois. When this specimen was first examined, scientists noted that it had all the hallmarks of the octopus form: a soft-bodied structure, the beginning of what would become 8 arms, and even the suggestion of an ink sac. It wasn't a primitive sketch of an octopus. It was, by the standards of that geological era, already a highly refined creature. Evolution had been working on this body plan for a long, long time before Paulsapia arrived. Fact number 3. The 330 million-year-old ancestor found in Montana is particularly interesting because it had 10 limbs rather than 8. Modern octopuses have 8 arms, but the ancient ancestor showed that the body plan began with more limbs before evolution sculpted it down to the streamlined 8-armed form we see today. This is a reminder that the octopus we know is not the first attempt. It is the product of hundreds of millions of years of relentless biological refinement. Each generation was slightly better than the last at surviving in its particular slice of ocean. The 8-armed design won out. Fact number 4. Octopuses belong to the class Cephalopoda, which translates directly from Greek as head-foot. This name refers to a remarkable anatomical quirk. In these animals, the head is directly connected to the arms. There is no neck, no separate body connecting them. The head and the limbs are one unified structure. Cephalopods include not just octopuses, but also squid, cuttlefish, and the chambered nautilus, and together they represent one of the most successful groups of animals in the history of life on Earth. They have inhabited every ocean on the planet, at virtually every depth, for the better part of 500 million years. Fact number 5. The word octopus itself comes from the Greek octopus, which simply means 8 foot. And while we're on the subject of language, there is a famous and long-running debate about the proper plural form. Octopi sounds elegant and has a certain Latinate flair, but it is actually grammatically incorrect. Octopus is a Greek word, not a Latin one, so the Latin plural suffix doesn't technically apply. Octopuses is the standard and broadly accepted English plural. Some language scholars favor octopods, which would be the proper Greek plural, but you will almost never hear that used in conversation. For what it's worth, most marine biologists simply say octopuses. Fact number 6. Octopuses are mollusks. They belong to the same phylum as clams, snails, and oysters. This is one of the most startling biological facts about them, because when you look at a clam, you are looking at what appears to be the opposite of an octopus in every way. Clams are passive, immobile filter feeders with no meaningful nervous system. Octopuses are active, intelligent, fast-moving predators with one of the most complex nervous systems in the entire invertebrate world. They share a common ancestor with clams, but their evolutionary paths diverge so dramatically that the two groups are almost unrecognizable as relatives. The octopus represents what happens when a lineage of soft-bodied animals abandons the defensive shell and invests everything into mobility, sensory acuity, and intelligence instead. Fact number 7. Most octopuses lost their internal shell during the course of their evolution. The ancestral cephalopods had shells. The chambered nautilus still does. And you can see fossilized shells from ancient relatives everywhere, but at some point in cephalopod evolution, the shell was internalized and eventually lost almost entirely. The only remnant of the shell in a modern octopus is a tiny vestigial structure sometimes called the stylet. This loss of the shell was a pivotal evolutionary gamble. Without a shell, the octopus had no hard armor protecting its soft body. It became potentially vulnerable to any predator that could seize it. And so, in response, the octopus lineage evolved everything else: intelligence, camouflage, ink, jet propulsion, extraordinary sensory systems, and a body so flexible it can escape through almost any space. The loss of the shell may have been the single greatest driver of octopus intelligence. Fact number 8. Because their bodies are almost entirely soft tissue, no bones, no hard exoskeleton, very little that fossilizes well, the actual fossil record for octopuses is remarkably sparse. Soft-bodied animals simply do not preserve well. This means that the octopus fossil record dramatically underrepresents the actual diversity and abundance of these animals throughout geological history. Scientists believe that octopuses have been far more common and diverse throughout the Mesozoic and Paleozoic eras than the fossil record suggests, but the evidence has simply melted away over millions of years, leaving almost no trace. In this way, the octopus has always been a creature of disappearance. Even in death, it fades without leaving much behind. Fact number 9. One of the most remarkable things about octopus evolution is what scientists call the evolution of complex intelligence in a solitary animal. Almost every other highly intelligent creature we know of, dolphins, elephants, great apes, corvids like crows and ravens, evolved their intelligence in the context of complex social groups. Social living generates enormous cognitive pressure. You need to track relationships, anticipate behavior, form alliances, recognize individuals, and engage in what we might loosely call politics. The social environment drives brain development. But octopuses are profoundly solitary. They live alone. They hunt alone. They have no persistent social bonds of any kind. And yet they evolved one of the most sophisticated nervous systems in the animal kingdom.
This challenges one of the central theories about how intelligence evolves and suggests that complex problem-solving and environmental unpredictability can drive brain development just as effectively as social complexity. Fact number 10. Octopuses are found in every ocean on Earth. They live in the tropics and in the Arctic. They inhabit shallow tide pools just centimeters deep, and the crushing darkness of the deep sea thousands of meters beneath the surface. They colonize coral reefs, sandy seafloors, rocky coastlines, kelp forests, hydrothermal vent communities, and everything in between. There are species adapted to water just barely above freezing, and species that thrive in warm tropical seas. This extraordinary ecological flexibility, the ability to make a living in almost any marine environment, is itself a testament to the fundamental adaptability of the octopus blueprint. They are one of the most geographically widespread invertebrates in existence.
Fact number 11. There are currently about 300 described species of octopus, distributed across the world's oceans. But scientists suspect this number is significantly lower than the true diversity of octopuses that actually exist. New species are still being described regularly. The deep ocean in particular is so vast and so poorly explored that marine biologists routinely encounter animals that have never been formally identified before. New octopus species have been discovered as recently as 2016, when NOAA researchers exploring deep-sea areas near Hawaii encountered a completely translucent, ghostly pale octopus that had never been seen or described before. It looked like a creature from another world, soft white, almost see-through, hovering in the deep black water with its arms extended. Scientists have since nicknamed it the ghost octopus, though it has not yet received a formal scientific name. Fact number 12. Despite being so ancient, so widespread, and so diverse, octopuses have chosen, almost universally, to remain hidden. They are creatures of dens, crevices, and shadows. They spend enormous amounts of their lives tucked away in rocky holes or buried in sand, venturing out primarily to hunt. Even when they move through the open ocean, they use their extraordinary camouflage to remain as invisible as possible. In this sense, the octopus is a master of presence through absence, everywhere and yet invisible, ancient and yet perpetually new to us. One of the most successful animals in the history of marine life, and yet also one of the least understood. Perhaps that is part of why they captivate us so completely. Part 2. The extraordinary body, anatomy and biology. Let your breathing slow a little more now. You're settling in nicely. Let's talk about what is actually going on inside an octopus, and prepare to have your idea of what a body can be completely rearranged. Fact number 13. An octopus has 3 hearts. 3. While you have one heart doing all the work of moving blood through your body, an octopus has devoted 3 separate hearts to the task. 2 of these hearts, called the branchial hearts, sit near the animal's gills. Their job is very specific: to push blood through the gill structures, where it picks up oxygen and releases carbon dioxide. Once the blood has been oxygenated, the 3rd heart, called the systemic heart, takes over and circulates that freshly oxygenated blood out to the rest of the body: the arms, the muscles, the organs, the brain. 3 hearts, each with its own role, working together in a coordinated relay system to keep this complex animal alive. Fact number 14. Here is something strange and wonderful about the octopus cardiovascular system. The systemic heart, the main heart that circulates blood to the body, actually stops beating when the octopus swims. When an octopus switches to jet propulsion, drawing water into its mantle and blasting it out through its siphon, the systemic heart arrests. It simply ceases to function during this activity. This is why octopuses prefer to crawl and walk rather than swim. Swimming through jet propulsion is essentially exhausting for them at a cardiovascular level. Their main heart goes offline, the body runs on residual oxygen, and after a short burst of movement, the octopus needs to rest and let its circulation recover. Octopuses can swim, and they can swim quickly in short bursts when they need to escape a predator, but they pay a real physiological price for it. Fact number 15. Octopus blood is blue. Not metaphorically, not slightly bluish. It is genuinely, properly blue when oxygenated, and a paler, almost colorless blue when deoxygenated. The reason for this is chemistry. Human blood is red because it uses iron-based hemoglobin to transport oxygen. The iron molecule at the center of hemoglobin is what gives blood its red color. Octopus blood, by contrast, uses a completely different oxygen-carrying protein called hemocyanin, which is copper-based rather than iron-based. Copper, when bonded to oxygen, produces a vivid blue color. The blue blood runs through the octopus at remarkably high pressure. Measurements have shown blood pressure values that can exceed 75 millimeters of mercury, which is higher than the blood pressure of many mammals because hemocyanin is less efficient at carrying oxygen than hemoglobin, and the three hearts need to compensate by pumping harder. Fact number 16. There is an advantage to the copper-based hemocyanin system, however. It works much better at low temperatures and in low oxygen environments. This is almost certainly why it evolved in marine invertebrates. The deep ocean is cold and oxygen poor, and in those conditions hemocyanin actually outperforms hemoglobin at oxygen transport. The octopus's blue blood is not a primitive feature waiting to be replaced by something better. It is a precisely engineered solution to the specific challenges of marine life. Fact number 17. The octopus body is almost entirely muscle. About 90% of an octopus's total body mass is muscular tissue, and because it has no skeleton whatsoever, no bones, no rigid exoskeleton, nothing hard inside at all except for a small cartilaginous capsule around the brain and a hard beak, it can squeeze through any opening that is large enough to admit its beak. The beak is the only truly rigid structure in the octopus's body. So if you want to know whether an octopus can fit through a particular hole, simply ask whether the beak can fit through. If the beak passes, the entire octopus follows. Giant Pacific octopuses, animals that might weigh 10 to 20 kilograms, have been documented squeezing through openings barely larger than a quarter. This isn't a trick or an illusion. It is simply what happens when a creature is built entirely from flexible muscle and has nothing rigid to get stuck. Fact number 18. An octopus breathes through gills, drawing water into its mantle cavity through an opening, passing it across the gill structures, and then expelling the now oxygen-depleted water through its siphon. The lamella structure of the gills, the fine layered architecture of the gill tissue, allows for extremely efficient oxygen uptake, extracting up to 65% of the available oxygen from passing water at room temperature. This is a remarkably efficient respiratory system, far more effective than the roughly 25% oxygen extraction efficiency of the human lung. Fact number 19. The mantle is the large dome-shaped muscular sac that most people think of as the octopus's head or body. In reality, the actual brain sits between the eyes, and the mantle sits behind them. Inside the mantle are all the major organs, the three hearts, the gills, the digestive system, the reproductive organs, and the ink sac. The mantle is enormously muscular and capable of rapid expansion and contraction. It's what powers the jet propulsion system, and also what allows the octopus to dramatically change its body shape in moments. Fact number 20. All octopuses have venom. Every single species. The venom is produced by bacteria living within salivary glands, and it is delivered through the beak when an octopus bites its prey. For the vast majority of octopus species, the venom is primarily designed to subdue prey, crabs,
clams, fish, and poses minimal risk to humans. A bite from most octopus species is roughly comparable to a bee sting, briefly painful, but not dangerous. There are exceptions, however, and we will return to those when we talk about individual species.
Fact number 21. The beak itself is worth a moment of quiet contemplation. It is made of chitin, the same material as insect exoskeletons, and it is the hardest structure in the octopus's body. It looks strikingly like a parrot's beak, curved and sharp, and it is hidden at the very center of the octopus, where all 8 arms meet. When an octopus catches a crab, it uses this beak to pierce the shell and inject venom, paralyzing the prey before eating it. The beak is powerful enough to crack through hard shells, and in larger species, it can cause a genuinely painful wound to a human hand. Fact number 22. The eyes of an octopus are remarkable structures. They are described as camera eyes, meaning they form focused images using a lens, an iris, and a retina. And they evolved completely independently from vertebrate eyes. This is one of the most celebrated examples of convergent evolution in biology. 2 completely unrelated lineages arriving at the same brilliant solution to the problem of vision. In some ways, octopus eyes are actually superior to human eyes. They do not have a blind spot, for instance. The optic nerve exits from the back of the retina rather than interrupting it. The octopus eye also has a horizontal rectangular pupil that remains level with the horizon, even when the animal's body tilts, maintaining a stable view of the world. Fact number 23. And yet, for all their visual sophistication, octopuses are almost certainly colorblind in the conventional sense. Their retinas contain only a single type of photoreceptor, which means they lack the multiple cone types that allow animals like us to discriminate color. This creates one of the deepest puzzles in octopus science. If they are colorblind, how do they produce such perfectly color-matched camouflage? How does an octopus turn itself into a seamless replica of a multicolored coral reef if it cannot perceive the colors it is matching? Various theories have been proposed. One fascinating hypothesis suggests that the strangely shaped pupils of octopuses might allow them to detect color through a physical mechanism called chromatic aberration, essentially using focus differences to distinguish wavelengths. This remains an active area of research. Fact number 24. The suckers that line the inside of an octopus's arms are not just gripping tools, they are sophisticated sensory organs. Each sucker is lined with chemoreceptors, allowing the octopus to taste everything it touches. When an octopus reaches an arm into a crevice, it is simultaneously touching and tasting the surfaces it contacts. The suckers can also detect chemical gradients in the water, helping the octopus to locate prey and navigate its environment. A large adult octopus may have 1,600 or more individual suckers across all 8 arms, each capable of independent sensory input and motor control. Fact number 25. Octopuses can regenerate lost arms. If an arm is severed by a predator, for instance, or through injury, the octopus can grow a new one over a period of weeks to months. The regenerated arm is fully functional, complete with suckers and sensory capability, though it may be slightly shorter than the original for some time. This regenerative ability is not unlimited, but it is a remarkable biological capability that speaks to the octopus's extraordinary physiological resilience. Fact number 26. The ink that octopuses eject when threatened is a remarkable chemical cocktail. It consists primarily of melanin, the same dark pigment found in human skin and hair, suspended in a mucous matrix.
The cloud of ink does two things simultaneously. It obscures vision, creating a dark screen behind which the octopus can escape, and the mucus component gives the ink a semi-solid structure that hangs in the water in a shape roughly resembling the octopus itself, potentially deceiving a predator into attacking the ink cloud while the actual octopus jets away. The ink also contains a compound called tyrosinase, which can interfere with a predator's ability to smell and taste, essentially jamming the chemical senses of fish that rely on those senses to hunt. Extraordinary chemistry in service of escape. Fact number 27. There is a dark irony in octopus ink chemistry, however. The same properties that make the ink so effective against predators make it potentially lethal to the octopus itself if the animal is trapped in its own ink. In confined spaces, aquarium tanks for instance, if an octopus releases a large amount of ink and cannot escape the cloud, the tyrosinase in the ink can begin to interfere with the octopus's own respiratory and sensory systems. Aquarists who keep octopuses know to change the water quickly if an ink discharge occurs. In the open ocean, of course, currents disperse the ink within seconds, and this situation rarely arises naturally. Fact number 28. Octopuses move in multiple ways. The most efficient locomotion for short distances is walking, using the 8 arms as flexible legs, flowing across the seafloor in a smooth, low undulation. For rapid escape, they switch to jet propulsion. The mantle fills with water, and then powerful muscular contractions blast that water out through the siphon in a concentrated jet, launching the octopus backward through the water at high speed. The siphon is directional. The octopus can aim it to steer, but the jet propulsion system exhausts the circulatory system quickly, which is why it's reserved for genuine emergencies rather than routine travel. Some species have also been observed walking bipedally on just 2 arms, which we will return to later.
Part 3. The many minds, the nervous system and brain. You can let your eyes rest heavy now. Stay with me in the soft darkness. We're going deeper into what makes the octopus so genuinely extraordinary, the mind it carries. Fact number 29. An octopus has not 1 brain but 9. This is not a simplification or a metaphor. There is one central brain located in the head, sitting between the eyes, wrapped in a cartilaginous capsule. And then there is an additional cluster of neurons, a ganglion, at the base of each of the 8 arms, giving each arm its own local processing center. These arm ganglia are sophisticated enough that they constitute functionally 8 additional brains. The octopus nervous system is genuinely distributed across 9 semi-independent centers of neural processing, all operating simultaneously and in coordination. Fact number 30. The central brain of the octopus has 30 distinct lobes, each apparently specialized for different functions. This degree of brain specialization rivals what we see in vertebrate brains, where different regions handle different sensory or cognitive tasks. The central brain sits in an extraordinary position. It is shaped like a donut, with the octopus's esophagus passing directly through the middle of it. Every morsel of food that an octopus swallows passes through a hole in its own brain. This is why octopuses must be careful about what they eat. If prey is too large and needs to be crushed before swallowing, the swallowing must be managed carefully to avoid the pieces scratching or injuring the brain tissue that surrounds the esophagus. Fact number 31. The common octopus, Octopus vulgaris, has approximately 500 million neurons in total. To put that in perspective, a honeybee has about 1 million neurons. A mouse has around 71 million. A rat has roughly 200 million. An octopus, at 500 million neurons, is in the same rough range as a dog. The sheer number of neurons is not the only measure of intelligence, but it is a meaningful indicator of the neural processing capacity of the animal. And of those 500 million neurons, roughly 2/3 are not in the central brain. They are distributed throughout the arms. Fact number 32. The brain-to-body ratio of an octopus is the largest of any invertebrate on Earth. It also exceeds the brain-to-body ratio of many vertebrates. Most fish, most reptiles, and many amphibians have smaller brain-to-body ratios than a common octopus. The octopus is not on the same level as mammals or most birds when it comes to this ratio, but it dramatically outperforms everything else in the invertebrate world, and its nearest invertebrate competitors aren't even close. Fact number 33. Because 2/3 of the octopus's neurons are in its arms, each arm operates with a significant degree of autonomy. An arm that has been completely severed from the body will continue to respond to touch, attempt to grip objects, and even reach toward food for up to an hour after separation. The arm in some real sense has a mind of its own. It will continue performing arm-like behaviors after it has been physically disconnected from the animal it belonged to. This is not a simple reflex. The arm ganglia are processing sensory information and generating coordinated motor responses independently of any higher brain function. Fact number 34. But the central brain and the arm brains work together in a sophisticated coordination system. The central brain can exert top-down control when it needs to, telling the arms what to do in complex situations, but for many routine tasks the arms handle themselves. When an octopus is navigating a rocky seafloor, the arms are constantly sensing and reacting to the local terrain, without waiting for the central brain to process each individual contact. The central brain is freed from managing thousands of micro-adjustments every second, because the arms are handling that locally. This allows the central brain to focus on higher-level strategic decisions: where to go, whether a potential prey item is worth pursuing, whether a predator has been detected. Fact number 35. In 2011, researchers published a fascinating experiment demonstrating the interplay between the central brain and arm autonomy in octopuses. They designed a maze that an octopus arm had to navigate in order to reach a food reward. Crucially, the maze was designed so that part of the arm would have to leave the water temporarily, which would remove the arm's ability to use its chemical sensors for navigation. The octopuses could still guide the arm through the maze to find the food, demonstrating that the central brain could take over and direct arm movement when local sensory information was unavailable. Central brain and arm brain working together, each compensating for the other's limitations. Fact number 36. In March 2023, scientists published the first ever brain recordings from freely moving octopuses, a technical achievement that had been frustratingly difficult to accomplish, because octopuses are remarkably good at finding and removing any equipment attached to their bodies. The researchers got around this by surgically implanting lightweight data loggers between the eyes, connected to electrodes inserted into regions of the brain associated with learning and memory, and then recorded the animals for 12 hours as they went about their normal lives. The recorded brainwave patterns were full of surprises. Among the familiar wave patterns were entirely novel ones that had never been seen in any other animal: long, slow, repeating waves that cycled roughly twice per second. Nobody yet knows what these mysterious waves are doing. They represent entirely new neuroscience. Fact number 37. Octopuses have both short-term and long-term memory. This has been demonstrated in laboratory settings where octopuses learned to complete a specific task for a food reward and then were tested days or weeks later to see whether they remembered the solution. They do. An octopus that learned to open a particular type of jar on Monday will still remember how to open it on the following Friday.
Specific solutions to specific problems are retained across significant time intervals. Fact number 38. The memory centers of the octopus brain show structural and functional similarities to the memory-forming regions of vertebrate brains, a striking case of convergent evolution at the cellular level. The vertical lobes of the octopus brain, which appear to be critical for learning and memory formation, work through processes that resemble those in the mammalian hippocampus in some important ways. Two completely independent evolutionary lineages arrived at similar cellular machinery for the same fundamental task: storing experience and learning from it.
Fact number 39. Octopuses are capable of observational learning, learning by watching others perform a task, rather than through trial and error alone. In laboratory experiments, octopuses that were allowed to watch another octopus solve a puzzle to obtain food subsequently solved the same puzzle significantly faster than octopuses that had not been allowed to observe. The watching octopus wasn't just benefiting from having seen the general layout of the puzzle. It appeared to be extracting information about the solution strategy that the other octopus had used. Observational learning was for a long time considered a cognitive hallmark of social vertebrates, animals that needed to learn from groupmates to survive. Its presence in the deeply solitary octopus is unexpected and still not fully explained. Fact number 40. Octopuses can recognize individual humans. This has been reported by aquarium workers and researchers consistently enough that it has become one of the best attested behavioral observations in octopus science. An octopus that has been handled gently and fed regularly by a particular person will show signs of recognition, approach, curiosity, reaching out with arms when that specific person appears, while showing entirely different behavior toward unfamiliar people. In at least one documented case at the Seattle Aquarium, an octopus was observed consistently squirting water at one particular staff member who apparently annoyed it while behaving perfectly normally around all other staff. Individual human recognition in invertebrate is remarkable. Fact number 41. The octopus's experience of consciousness is one of the most provocative questions in modern neuroscience and philosophy of mind. Octopuses are the only invertebrates listed in the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness, a 2012 document signed by a prominent group of neuroscientists, asserting that the neurological substrates for conscious experience are not unique to humans and likely exist in many non-human animals. The declaration specifically named octopuses as animals with the neurological prerequisites for conscious experience. Whether an octopus actually experiences something, whether there is something it is like to be an octopus, is a question that science cannot yet fully answer. But the biological evidence is compelling enough that most serious researchers take the question seriously. Fact number 42. Perhaps the most vivid single piece of evidence for something going on in the octopus mind comes from observations of what appears to be dreaming. We'll return to this in detail later, but for now, octopuses have been observed changing color, texture, and pattern while they sleep, flickering through rapid color changes as if responding to experiences, all while their bodies remain still and their eyes stay closed. The leading hypothesis is that these changes are caused by neural activity in the sleeping brain replaying or processing waking experiences. Whether this constitutes dreaming in any meaningful sense remains scientifically uncertain, but it has deeply impressed researchers who have witnessed it. Part 4. Masters of Disguise, Camouflage and Color Change. Let your body sink a little heavier now. The ocean around us is quiet. Let's watch an octopus disappear. Fact number 43. The camouflage system of the octopus is, without any contest, the most sophisticated adaptive coloration system of any animal on Earth. While chameleons and cuttlefish are often cited as color-changing champions, the octopus's ability exceeds them in speed, precision,
and physical complexity. An octopus can completely transform its appearance, color, pattern, and physical texture in under 200 milliseconds. That is faster than the blink of a human eye. Fact number 44. The primary tools of octopus camouflage are specialized cells called chromatophores. These are tiny, elastic sacs embedded just beneath the surface of the skin, each filled with a specific pigment: red, orange, yellow, brown, or black. Each chromatophore is surrounded by its own set of tiny radial muscles, which are directly connected to the nervous system. When the nervous system sends a signal, those muscles contract, pulling the pigment sac open and spreading the color across a wider area of skin surface. When the muscles relax, the sac shrinks back to a tiny dot, concentrating the color into a point too small to be visible. The entire system is neurally controlled, not hormonally, which is why it operates at the speed of a nerve impulse rather than the glacial pace of hormone release. Fact number 45. An octopus skin contains millions of individual chromatophores, each independently controllable. The brain is effectively operating a display system of millions of individually addressable pixels, each of which can be turned on or off in milliseconds. The result is the ability to generate virtually any pattern, at virtually any scale, with extraordinary speed. Each chromatophore species of octopus has evolved up to 30 distinct camouflage patterns, optimized for its particular habitat, but it can also generate entirely novel patterns in response to entirely novel environments. Fact number 46. Below the chromatophore layer lie two additional types of reflective cells. Iridophores are cells that contain stacks of reflecting plates, creating structural coloration, the kind that produces iridescent greens, blues, silvers, and golds that shimmer as the viewing angle changes. Leucophores, meanwhile, are cells that scatter light broadly, reflecting back whatever wavelengths of light are present in the local environment. In deep water, where mostly blue and green light penetrates, the leucophores reflect blue and green. Near the surface in bright sunlight, they reflect white. This passive environmental color matching happens automatically, without any active neural control, providing a baseline level of background matching camouflage, even when the octopus isn't actively working to disguise itself.
Fact number 47. The texture-changing ability is separate from and complementary to the color-changing ability. The skin surface of an octopus contains thousands of small muscular projections called papillae. When the muscles in these papillae contract, they push upward, creating bumps, spikes, ridges, and complex three-dimensional surface textures. When they relax, the skin surface flattens out to smooth. This means an octopus can be sitting on a jagged, barnacle-encrusted rock and simultaneously match its color to the rock's mottled surface and transform its skin texture to mimic the physical texture of the rock surface. The visual result is essentially perfect. Not just the right colors, but the right surface geometry. Predators looking directly at the animal see what appears to be more rock. Fact number 48. A particularly remarkable discovery was made in 2015 when researchers found that octopus skin contains the same light-sensitive proteins, opsins, that are found in their eyes. The skin can detect light independently of the eyes. This means that an octopus's skin may be able to sense the color and quality of light falling on it directly, without routing that information through the eyes and brain first. In principle, this could allow the skin to contribute its own local color matching information, with different parts of the skin responding to their local light environment independently. The full significance of skin-based light detection in octopus camouflage is still being worked out, but it represents an entirely different way of experiencing the visual world. Fact number 49. the paradox of colorblind camouflage runs even deeper than it initially appears. Not only are most octopuses unable to discriminate color with their eyes, but their camouflage is often extraordinarily accurate in color matching complex multicolored backgrounds. Coral reefs, for instance, with their patchwork of reds, purples, greens, and yellows. How is this possible? One hypothesis involves the distinctively shaped pupils of many octopus species, pupils that are narrow slits or W-shaped or U-shaped rather than circular. Mathematical modeling suggests that such shaped pupils, by altering the way light enters the eye, might allow the octopus to distinguish different wavelengths of light based on the degree of focus at different depths within the eye. The physics of chromatic aberration, the fact that different wavelengths of light focus at slightly different distances, could in theory provide color information even from a single photoreceptor type. It's an audacious hypothesis and it remains unproven, but it is one of the most elegant potential explanations in all of biology. Fact number 50. The mimic octopus, discovered only in 1998 in the shallow coastal waters of Indonesia, represents the most extreme development of cephalopod camouflage philosophy. Rather than simply blending into the background, the mimic octopus actively impersonates other, more dangerous animals. It changes not just its color and texture, but its body posture, the configuration of its arms, and its movement pattern to imitate the appearance and behavior of other species. Documented impersonations include the venomous lionfish, the flatfish, the banded sea snake, the mantis shrimp, the feather star, the giant crab, the jellyfish, and several others, a total of at least 15 different animals that researchers have confirmed. The octopus appears to select its impersonation based on what predator is threatening it, deploying the animal most likely to intimidate that specific predator. This is not mindless mimicry. It requires recognition of the threat and selection of the appropriate response. Fact number 51. Octopuses also use their color-changing ability for communication. Though unlike the highly social squid and cuttlefish, octopus communication is generally less elaborate and less frequent, reflecting their solitary lifestyle. When two octopuses encounter each other, they frequently display patterns that seem to signal threat level, readiness to fight, or willingness to mate. The larger Pacific striped octopus, a species known for unusually social behavior, uses elaborate color displays during mating and while hunting cooperatively. In another species, the gloomy octopus, researchers have documented what appears to be deliberate throwing of objects, shells, silt, debris at other octopuses during territorial disputes, sometimes apparently aimed at specific individuals. Whether this constitutes intentional communication is debated. Fact number 52. The blue-ringed octopus uses color change for a completely different purpose. Aposematic warning. When the blue-ringed octopus feels threatened, the 50 to 60 iridescent blue rings on its skin begin to flash, pulsing, glowing, shifting with an almost hypnotic intensity. This is not camouflage. This is the opposite of camouflage. The octopus is making itself as conspicuous as possible, advertising its lethality to any potential predator foolish enough to consider attacking it. The blue rings flash because they contain iridophores that reflect blue light with extraordinary intensity when activated, creating a vivid, pulsing glow unlike anything else in the reef environment. Fact number 53. The octopus body plan is so flexible that some species have evolved the ability to change their overall body shape dramatically, not just their surface color and texture. Some octopuses flatten and spread themselves to look like a flounder lying on the sand. Others bunch and reshape their arms to create the silhouette of a sea urchin. Others still arrange themselves to mimic a rock, a piece of coral, a clump of algae, or a discarded shell. The transformation is often so complete that a trained marine biologist, looking at a video recording will momentarily lose track of where the octopus is in the frame. Fact number 54. Research on octopus camouflage has inspired significant engineering and materials science research. Scientists at institutions including MIT, UC Irvine, and Northeastern University have been working to develop camouflage materials and technologies inspired by the octopus chromatophore system, flexible, soft materials with embedded color-changing elements controlled by electrical signals. Potential applications include adaptive military camouflage, medical imaging technologies, wearable displays, and soft robotics. The octopus has been doing this for 300 million years, and human engineers are only just beginning to understand how to replicate it. Fact number 55. There is an almost meditative quality to watching an octopus camouflage. The transformation is so rapid and so complete that it seems to violate some fundamental principle about the persistence of physical objects. One moment there is a richly patterned octopus on a rock, and then without drama or flourish, there is just the rock. The octopus hasn't moved, it hasn't hidden, it simply stopped being visible, it became the environment around it. For an animal that lives entirely on concealment, this is the supreme achievement. To be fully present and yet completely invisible is both a survival strategy and, from a certain perspective, a kind of art. Part 5. The Problem Solvers. Intelligence and Learning. Let your thoughts drift now, easy and loose. The water is warm and still. Let's watch an octopus think. Fact number 56. Researchers categorize octopus intelligence using 4 key pillars: behavioral flexibility, imagination, reasoning, and memory and foresight. Behavioral flexibility means the ability to adapt behavior based on changing circumstances, to respond differently to the same situation depending on context. Imagination involves mentally representing scenarios or solutions that aren't immediately present. Reasoning is the capacity to weigh evidence and infer conclusions. Memory and foresight together represent the ability to learn from the past and plan for the future. Octopuses have demonstrated compelling evidence of all 4. Fact number 57. One of the most consistently documented intelligent behaviors in octopuses is jar opening. Octopuses in aquaria learn to open sealed jars containing prey animals like crabs, with remarkable competence. They accomplish this by gripping the jar body with multiple arms while using other arms to rotate the lid counterclockwise, a task that requires both mechanical understanding of the threaded lid mechanism and the dexterous coordination to apply torque efficiently. What makes this particularly interesting is that the octopus must understand the relationship between the cap and the container, that they are separate objects that interact in a specific way. This kind of part-whole reasoning is considered a relatively advanced cognitive ability. Fact number 58. Octopuses will solve the same puzzle through multiple different approaches, switching tactics when one method isn't working. When researchers presented octopuses with clam shells that had been wired shut with different kinds of fasteners, the octopuses did not perseverate. They did not keep trying the same approach that wasn't working. If a shell couldn't be pried open using suction force, the octopus would try drilling through it with its radula, the raspy tongue-like structure used to scrape away shell material. If that failed, it would switch to chipping. This flexible, context-sensitive problem-solving is what distinguishes genuine intelligence from hardwired instinct. A truly instinctive animal repeats the same behavior regardless of outcome. The octopus monitors outcomes and updates its strategy. Fact number 59. In laboratory maze studies, octopuses navigate complex labyrinths to reach food rewards with impressive efficiency. More significantly, They remember the solution. An octopus that successfully navigated a maze in one session will typically navigate the same maze more quickly in subsequent sessions, demonstrating that specific spatial memories are being stored and retrieved. The improvement in performance over trials is not merely due to general familiarity. Octopuses show faster solution finding, even when the maze is presented after a gap of several days, indicating genuine long-term spatial memory retention. Fact number 60. Octopuses can also perform what researchers call transfer of learning, applying knowledge from one situation to a structurally similar but physically different situation. If an octopus has learned that a particular visual cue predicts food reward, it can apply that learned rule to new visual cues with a similar structural relationship to the reward, even if the specific appearance of the cue has changed. This kind of abstraction, learning rules rather than just specific stimulus-response pairs, is another hallmark of sophisticated cognition. Fact number 61. Some individual octopuses are described by researchers as having distinctly different personalities and problem-solving styles. Studies have categorized octopuses as either neophilic, genuinely curious about novel objects, quick to approach and investigate new things, or neophobic, cautious about novelty, preferring to avoid new objects or situations. These personality differences are consistent within individuals over time and appear to influence problem-solving performance. Neophilic individuals tend to approach puzzle tasks faster and are more likely to attempt solutions, though interestingly, they don't always solve the puzzle before more cautious individuals, possibly because their eagerness leads to less systematic exploration. Fact number 62. The famous Inky escape story is perhaps the single most resonant anecdote in octopus intelligence history. Inky was an octopus resident at the National Aquarium of New Zealand. One night, Inky somehow got the lid of his tank slightly ajar. He squeezed through the opening, crossed the floor of the aquarium room, found a drain pipe in the floor, slid down the drain pipe, dropped into Hawke's Bay, and swam to freedom. The next morning, aquarium staff found the tank empty, the lid displaced, and a trail of moisture across the floor to the drain. Inky was never seen again. The question of exactly how Inky knew where the drain pipe led, whether he understood that it would take him to the sea, whether the escape was planned or opportunistic, these are questions that cannot be answered, but the execution was flawless. Fact number 63. Octopuses in aquaria regularly escape their tanks, and marine biologists who work with them have accumulated a rich lore of escape stories. Aquariums that house octopuses typically face the challenge that the animals will reliably identify and exploit any gap, crack, or improperly secured lid. They have been found in neighboring tanks, helping themselves to fish. They have been found crawling across laboratory floors in the middle of the night. They have been found hiding inside equipment that was placed near their tanks. One particularly enterprising octopus at the Santa Monica Pier Aquarium repeatedly disassembled a pump that was feeding into its tank, apparently because the mechanical noise bothered it, before eventually being housed in a tank with no such equipment. Fact number 64. Play behavior in octopuses was documented in a series of careful observations by researcher Jennifer Mather and her colleagues. They gave octopuses pill bottles, floating, sealed plastic containers with nothing inside, and observed that some individuals repeatedly grabbed, released, and recaptured the bottle as it drifted in the current, even though there was no food or reward associated with the behavior, and even after it was clear the bottle contained nothing interesting. The behavior was entirely self-generated, apparently motivated by nothing other than the activity itself.
Play behavior performed for its own sake rather than for any immediate functional reward is considered by many researchers to be a strong indicator of a certain quality of inner experience. Fact number 65. In 2024, a study in the journal Cell brought brand new complexity to the question of octopus cognition by simultaneously recording color changes and neural activity in sleeping octopuses. The researchers found that the active sleep state, characterized by color flickering, arm twitching, and eye movement, was associated with neural activity closely resembling the brain's waking state. The origin of this activity during quiet sleep was traced to brain regions associated with learning and memory. This suggests that the quiet sleep phase may involve memory consolidation, the processing and storage of the day's experiences, while the active sleep phase replays waking experience in a way that at least functionally resembles dreaming. Fact number 66. Octopuses have been observed making what appear to be aesthetic choices, not just functional ones. Some octopuses will rearrange the objects around their dens repeatedly, placing shells and rocks in configurations that don't seem to serve obvious defensive or hunting purposes, and will rearrange them again if disturbed. Whether this constitutes aesthetic preference in any meaningful sense is a profound philosophical question that cannot be answered with certainty, but the behavior is interesting enough to have attracted serious scientific attention.
Fact number 67. Researchers studying octopus cognition frequently note that the hardest challenge is simply designing experiments appropriate for an animal so different from vertebrates. Standard intelligence tests used with mammals often rely on social cues, body language recognition, or vocal response, none of which are meaningful for a solitary, non-vocal invertebrate. The octopus may have cognitive abilities that current test paradigms are simply not capturing, not because the abilities aren't there, but because the tests are designed for animals with fundamentally different sensory and social architectures. As one researcher put it, when you try to measure octopus intelligence with tests designed for vertebrates, you may be asking the octopus to demonstrate its intelligence in a language it doesn't speak. The field of octopus cognition research is young, and the tools it is developing are still being refined. Every study that appears is genuinely new territory. There is also the challenge of the octopus's extraordinary individuality. Individual octopuses vary so dramatically in behavior, curiosity level, and problem-solving style that it is genuinely difficult to make generalizations about the species as a whole. An octopus that is bold and highly neophilic, drawn toward novelty, eager to investigate, will interact with a test apparatus in completely different ways than an octopus that is cautious and prefers the familiar. In vertebrate animal research, this individual variation is typically managed by using large sample sizes. With octopuses, collecting large sample sizes is difficult, time-consuming, and logistically challenging because of how solitary and widely distributed they are. Much of what we know about octopus intelligence comes from studies with relatively small numbers of individuals, which means that extraordinary animals, the outliers, the particularly clever ones, may be skewing the picture. Or perhaps not. Perhaps even the average octopus is considerably more cognitively sophisticated than we have yet understood. Dr. Alex Schnell, a comparative psychologist who has studied cephalopod cognition extensively and served as on-screen scientist for National Geographic's acclaimed 2024 series, Secrets of the Octopus, has argued that the 4 pillars of intelligence she uses to analyze octopus behavior, behavioral flexibility, imagination, reasoning, and memory and foresight, are not simply boxes to tick. They represent a framework for understanding how any mind, built in any body, navigates the fundamental challenge of surviving in an uncertain world. When you look through that lens at the octopus, you see an animal that is doing remarkably similar things to what any intelligent creature does, building models of its environment, updating those models based on experience, and using those models to predict what will happen next and act accordingly. The octopus does all of this with a brain built from completely different materials and organized in a completely different way from any vertebrate. And that, Schnell and others argue, may be the most important thing about the octopus. Not that it is smart, but that its smartness took such a radically different path to get where it is. Part 6: Lives Fully Lived, Behavior, Personality, and the Daily World of the Octopus. The night is very soft around you now. Let's spend some time simply living alongside an octopus for a while, following it through its day. Fact number 68. An octopus typically spends a significant portion of its life inside a den. The den is usually a hole in a rock, a crevice in a reef, or a space beneath a large stone, something small enough that the entrance can be partially barricaded with rocks and shells, but large enough for the octopus to turn around inside. The octopus is deeply attached to its particular den. If moved to a new area, it will often search for a new den site that matches the dimensional profile of the old one. The den is sanctuary, hunting base, sleeping chamber, and for females, maternity ward. It is the center of the octopus's world. Fact number 69. The area just outside a den often reveals the octopus's diet. Octopuses eat at their dens, discarding the shells and exoskeletons of their prey outside the entrance. Marine biologists call this accumulation of discarded shells a midden, and experienced divers know to look for these piles as indicators of octopus presence. A well-stocked midden outside a suitable crevice is one of the most reliable ways to locate a wild octopus. The midden can be extensive. A successful octopus may build up quite a collection of crab shells, clam shells, and other debris outside its home. Fact number 70. Octopuses are primarily nocturnal hunters, though many species also hunt during the day. Hunting strategies vary considerably across species and individuals. Some octopuses are active pursuit hunters, chasing down crabs across open seafloor. Others prefer to ambush, remaining motionless and camouflaged until prey comes close enough to grab, then striking with explosive speed. Most prey capture involves the octopus extending one or several arms to grasp the prey, then drawing it in toward the beak. The suckers, which can taste what they touch, help the octopus quickly assess whether something is edible. The beak then delivers the killing bite and the venom injection. Fact number 71. The larger Pacific striped octopus has an unusual and somewhat mischievous hunting technique that researchers find delightful, rather than simply grabbing its prey. Shrimp. Typically, this species sneaks up to the shrimp from behind, then taps it on the opposite shoulder, so to speak. The shrimp, startled, jumps away from the arm that tapped it directly into the arms of the waiting octopus. This tapping maneuver requires the octopus to predict the direction the shrimp will flee, position itself accordingly, and time the tap perfectly. It is a hunting strategy built on an understanding of prey psychology, and it is, by almost any measure, funny. Fact number 72. Octopus diet is broadly carnivorous: crustaceans, mollusks, fish, and other invertebrates. But the range of prey varies considerably by species and individual. The giant Pacific octopus has been observed catching and eating small sharks and seabirds that ventured too close to the water surface. Common octopuses have been documented catching and eating fish significantly larger than themselves, wrestling them into submission with multiple arms. Some octopuses will even eat other octopuses. Cannibalism is not rare and is one of the hazards of placing two octopuses in the same tank. The octopus is in every sense an apex predator within its ecological niche. Fact number 73. The blanket octopus is one of the most remarkable species in terms of unusual survival strategies. The female blanket octopus has a large, flowing membrane connecting her outer arms that spreads open dramatically when threatened, making her appear vastly larger than she is. But this species has an additional trick that borders on extraordinary. Small individuals, juveniles, are immune to the venom of the Portuguese man-o'-war jellyfish, a creature whose tentacles are potently toxic to most marine animals. The juvenile octopus has been observed tearing tentacles from Portuguese man-o'-war specimens and carrying them as weapons. An octopus wielding jellyfish tentacles as a sting-equipped whip is frankly one of the most remarkable scenes in natural history. Fact number 74. Gloomy octopuses, Octopus tetrachus, found along the eastern coast of Australia and in New Zealand, were long described as solitary and antisocial, as octopuses generally are. In 2012, researchers discovered something surprising. At a site in Jervis Bay, Australia, gloomy octopuses had formed what could only be described as an octopus city. Multiple octopuses were living in close proximity around a large rock outcrop, interacting regularly, chasing each other, engaging in apparent displays, and sometimes sharing dens during the day. This city, nicknamed Oclantis by the press, overturned assumptions about octopus sociability and raised new questions about what conditions might lead octopuses to tolerate or even seek out the company of others. Fact number 75. The sleep behavior of octopuses is genuinely extraordinary in its implications. Octopuses go through distinct sleep states, alternating between what researchers call quiet sleep, in which the animal is completely still, skin pale, eyes nearly closed, and active sleep, in which the skin begins to flicker with rapidly shifting colors and textures, the eyes move under their closed lids, and the arms twitch and contract. This sequence of alternating sleep states, with a long quiet phase followed by a shorter active phase, is strikingly parallel to the alternation between slow-wave sleep and REM sleep in mammals and birds. The active sleep of the octopus bears functional similarities to REM sleep, the phase most associated with dreaming in humans. Fact number 76. The viral video of Heidi the octopus is worth describing in detail because it is one of the most striking animal behavior recordings ever made. Heidi was a day octopus kept in a home tank by marine biologist David Scheel of Alaska Pacific University, and she was filmed sleeping one night as part of a PBS documentary. Over the course of a minute or so, her sleeping body rippled with a succession of colors: pale white, then rapidly shifting to dappled yellow, then a sudden flash of deep red, then a spreading darkness, then back to mottled brown and cream. She didn't move, she didn't wake. Her body was still except for the cascading color changes spreading across her mantle and arms. If the brain activity underlying those color changes was replaying some waking experience, a hunt perhaps or an escape, then we were watching something extraordinary, the visual readout of what might be an octopus dream. Fact number 77. The question of whether octopuses experience something like emotions is taken seriously by researchers who work with them. Individual octopuses have been observed responding to anesthetics, a standard test for whether an organism is sentient enough to require pain management in research. In 2021, researchers conducted a study in which octopuses were given MDMA, commonly known as the mood-affecting drug ecstasy, in their water. The octopuses, which are normally solitary, began seeking out and spending time with other octopuses. This experiment was designed to probe the serotonin system, and it found that octopuses responded to a serotonin-releasing drug by becoming more pro-social, just as humans do. The serotonin system, the molecular machinery of social bonding and mood, works in octopuses in ways that parallel its function in vertebrates. Fact number 78. One area where octopus behavior continues to surprise researchers is their apparent capacity for what might be called boredom or frustration. Octopuses in captivity that are given nothing to do, no puzzles, no novel objects, no changing environment, show behavioral signs of distress. They may pace their tanks, refuse food, or develop stereotypic repetitive behaviors. Many aquariums now provide routine environmental enrichment for their octopuses, new objects to investigate, puzzles to solve, varied feeding regimes, because the evidence strongly suggests that failing to provide cognitive stimulation has negative effects on the animal's welfare. An octopus with nothing to think about is an unhappy octopus. Negative.
Part 7, Love, Death, and New Life. Reproduction and the Life Cycle. The breathing is easy now. We're moving through one of the most poignant chapters in the octopus story. Fact number 79. The reproductive strategy of the octopus is built around a concept called semelparity, a single, all-consuming reproductive event followed by death. Unlike animals that reproduce multiple times throughout a long life, most octopuses reproduce once, devote everything to that reproduction, and die. This is not a malfunction or a tragedy by evolutionary standards. It is a strategy that apparently works. The energy that would have gone into continued adult survival is redirected into egg production and parental care, maximizing the survival of the next generation at the cost of the current one. Fact number 80. Mating in octopuses can be a tense, sometimes dangerous affair. The male approaches the female cautiously because females are generally larger than males and not inclined to tolerate unwanted contact. The male has a specialized arm, the third right arm in most species, called the hectocaudalus, which has a modified groove-shaped tip designed to transfer packets of sperm, called spermatophores, into the female's mantle cavity. In some species, including the argonaut or paper nautilus, a relative of octopuses, the hectocaudalus arm can actually detach from the male's body and crawl independently into the female's mantle, then continue to function without the male being present. When scientists first discovered this detached arm in the mantle of an argonaut in the 19th century, they classified it as a separate parasitic worm species. It took years before anyone realized it was in fact part of a male. Fact number 81. In some octopus species, females have been known to strangle and eat their mating partners during or immediately after copulation. Males are aware of this risk, which may be why some species have evolved the extraordinarily long arms that allow mating at a distance, and why some use the tip of the hectocaudalus to maintain maximum distance between their body and the female's beak throughout the process. The male's death during mating is in some species not an accidental outcome. It may represent a female assessment that a dead male is a useful protein resource for egg production. Natural selection does not value sentimentality. Fact number 82. After mating, the female begins her search for an appropriate den for egg laying. She is exceptionally careful in this selection. The den must be defensible, must have access to well-oxygenated water, and must be the right size for the clutch she is about to lay. Once settled, she produces her eggs in long clustered strings that she weaves and anchors to the ceiling and walls of the den. Depending on species and size, a female octopus may lay anywhere from dozens to hundreds of thousands of eggs. The giant Pacific octopus can lay up to 100,000 eggs in a single clutch, weaving them into elegant braided strands that hang from the rock surfaces above her.
Fact number 83. From the moment the first egg is laid, the female enters a state of absolute maternal devotion that will last until her death. She does not leave the eggs. She does not eat. She spends every hour of every day tending to the eggs, fanning them gently with her arms to ensure oxygenated water circulates around them, cleaning them carefully to prevent fungal growth, and defending them ferociously from anything that comes near. The period of egg care varies enormously by species. Common octopus eggs hatch in 3 to 5 weeks. Giant Pacific octopus eggs, developing in cold northern Pacific waters, take 6 months. Throughout that entire period, the female does not eat. She starves herself into increasingly poor condition, sustained by metabolic reserves that are slowly exhausted. Fact number 84. During her period of egg brooding, a biological process of programmed self-destruction begins in the female's body. The optic glands, small organs sitting just behind the octopus's eyes, begin secreting a cascade of hormones that drive senescence, the accelerated deterioration of tissues throughout the body. The female's immune system weakens, muscle mass is catabolized for energy. Cells that would normally repair themselves stop doing so. The octopus literally ages herself to death in service of her eggs. In experiments where the optic glands were surgically removed from brooding females, the females stopped tending their eggs, began eating again, and lived considerably longer, demonstrating that the glands are actively driving the terminal decline. The self-destruction is not passive starvation. It is programmed biological sacrifice. Fact number 85. The male also dies after mating, typically within a few weeks, though the mechanism is less well understood than in females. Some males begin to show signs of neurological deterioration almost immediately after mating. They may behave erratically, forget how to camouflage, lose coordination. The death of both parents shortly after reproduction has been proposed as an evolutionary mechanism to prevent overpopulation. Octopuses grow quickly, are highly effective predators, and reproduce prolifically. If the adults survive to compete with their own offspring for resources, the ecological dynamics might not work. The programmed death of the parents clears the ecological field for the next generation. Fact number 86. When the eggs hatch, the tiny octopuses called paralarvae are often smaller than a grain of rice. They emerge into the water column and float near the surface for weeks to months, living as planktonic animals, drifting with the currents, feeding on tiny crustaceans and other zooplankton. At this stage, they look like miniature adults, but behave very differently. They are pelagic, drifting through open water rather than crawling on the sea floor. This planktonic phase disperses the young octopuses widely, reducing competition with siblings and potentially colonizing new habitats. Fact number 87. After the planktonic phase, the juvenile octopuses settle to the sea floor and begin their bottom-dwelling lives. They are immediately independent. No parent is present. No family group exists. No communal knowledge is transmitted. Everything the octopus needs to know, it must learn by itself. From the moment it touches the seafloor for the first time, it must find a den. It must learn to hunt. It must learn to camouflage. It must learn the geography of its local environment. All alone, from the very beginning, with no guidance except what its nervous system is born knowing. And yet they succeed. They survive, grow, hunt, think, and eventually mate, all accomplished by an animal that has never once had a teacher. Fact number 88. The typical lifespan of a common octopus is 1 to 2 years. Smaller species live even shorter lives. Some tropical species live only 6 months. The blue-ringed octopus lives roughly 2 to 3 years. The giant Pacific octopus, at the large end,
lives approximately 3 to 5 years. These are astonishingly short lives for animals with such cognitive complexity, and researchers have noted the evolutionary irony of this mismatch. The octopus has invested enormously in neural development, in learning capacity, in memory formation, and then doesn't live long enough to fully exploit those investments. Some researchers speculate that if octopuses lived as long as, say, dolphins or ravens, their demonstrated intelligence might develop in ways that would be genuinely startling. We are, in a sense, seeing octopus intelligence in its youth, constrained by a lifespan that evolution hasn't yet lengthened to match the complexity of the brain it contains.
Part 8. A world of species. Diversity from giant to tiny. We're drifting now, easy and slow, through the many rooms of the octopus world. Fact number 89. The giant Pacific octopus, Octopus doflani, is the largest octopus species on Earth. The average adult weighs somewhere between 10 and 50 kilograms, with an arm span of 3 to 5 meters, roughly the width of a small living room, measured fingertip to fingertip. The largest reliably documented specimen weighed 272 kilograms and had an arm span of more than 9 meters. This animal is, by any measure, enormous. A soft-bodied invertebrate, the size of a large person, capable of subduing and eating small sharks, seabirds, and virtually anything else that comes within reach. It inhabits the cold, nutrient-rich waters of the North Pacific, from Japan to Alaska to California, typically living in rocky areas from the intertidal zone down to about 1,500 meters depth. Fact number 90. At the opposite end of the size spectrum, the star-sucker pygmy octopus, Octopus wolfi, is the smallest known octopus species. Adults measure approximately 1.5 centimeters in body length, smaller than a thumbnail, with arm span of perhaps 3 to 4 centimeters when fully extended. It lives in the Indo-Pacific region in shallow coastal waters and sandy or muddy seafloors. Despite its tiny size, it shows all the characteristic octopus behaviors: camouflage, den building, hunting of small prey, and the same general intelligence profile as its larger relatives. Size, in the octopus world, does not determine cognitive capacity. Fact number 91. The blue-ringed octopus, comprising 4 confirmed species of the genus Hapalochlaena, is one of the most dangerous animals on Earth relative to its size. Adults measure between 12 and 20 centimeters, roughly the size of a golf ball, but carry enough venom to kill 26 adult humans. The venom is tetrodotoxin, one of the most potent naturally occurring neurotoxins known to science, also found in pufferfish. Tetrodotoxin works by blocking the sodium channels that nerves use to fire. It causes complete motor paralysis, while leaving the victim fully conscious, aware of everything that is happening, unable to breathe or move. Death, if it occurs, is from respiratory failure. There is no antivenom. The only treatment is immediate mechanical ventilation to keep the patient breathing until the toxin is metabolized, which takes several hours. Despite the lethality of the venom, blue-ringed octopuses are not aggressive. They give clear, vivid warning with their flashing rings. The majority of serious envenomations occur when people pick them up without realizing what they have. Fact number 92. The Dumbo octopus, genus Grimpotithus, is one of the deepest living octopus species known to science, found at depths of 3,000 to 4,000 meters and occasionally much deeper. They are named for the large, ear-like fins on either side of the mantle that they use for swimming. The fins flap gently and slowly, giving the animal a somewhat otherworldly, dreamlike quality as it moves. Unlike most octopuses, the Dumbo octopus lacks an ink sac.
At the depths where it lives, in near complete darkness, there is nothing for an ink screen to hide it from. It swallows its prey whole, rather than using a beak to tear it apart. Its color is typically pale white to pink, and at those cold, dark depths, it is extraordinarily rarely observed by humans. Fact number 93. The mimic octopus, Thaumoctopus mimicus, was only formally described by science in 2001, just over 2 decades ago, despite living in relatively accessible shallow waters of the Indo-Pacific, particularly in Indonesia and the Philippines. This is partly because it is so good at looking like other things that observers consistently failed to identify it as an octopus. Early sightings were written off as sightings of the animals it was imitating. Its scientific name, Thaumoctopus, means wonder octopus, a name that seems entirely appropriate for an animal that can be a flatfish one moment, a lionfish the next, and a sea snake the moment after that. Fact number 94. The blanket octopus, genus Tremoctopus, has the most extreme sexual size dimorphism of any known animal on Earth. Female blanket octopuses can grow to up to 2 meters in body length. Males, by contrast, have a maximum recorded length of about 2.4 centimeters. The female is approximately 40,000 times heavier than the male. This is not a typo. The female is 40,000 times more massive than the male of the same species. The evolutionary reasons for this extraordinary disparity are still being studied, but it has resulted in a situation where the male lives essentially his entire adult life focused on a single goal, finding and mating with a female before dying without ever eating again after reaching sexual maturity.
Fact number 95. The coconut octopus, Amphioctopus marginatus, also called the veined octopus, is the confirmed holder of the title of the first invertebrate documented to use tools in the sense of collecting objects for later use. When researchers from Melbourne's Museum Victoria spent 500 diver hours over a decade observing these animals in Indonesian waters, they documented something that stopped them cold: octopuses collecting discarded coconut shell halves, cleaning them with jets of water, then carrying them sometimes up to 20 meters across the seafloor, apparently to use as portable shelter at a later time. The shells provided no immediate benefit. The carrying was awkward, slow, and made the octopus more visible and vulnerable to predators during transport. The entire value of the shells lay in their future use as protection. This is tool use in its purest cognitive sense, acquiring and transporting an object specifically because of its anticipated future utility. Fact number 96. The California two-spot octopus, Octopus bimaculoides, has the distinction of being the first octopus species to have its complete genome sequenced in 2015. The genome paper published in the journal Nature revealed a genome of about 2.7 billion base pairs, similar in size to the human genome, but organized in a radically different way, with enormous gene family expansions in areas associated with brain development and evidence of massive, unprecedented RNA editing activity. The two-spot is also notable for the pair of false eye spots on either side of its mantle, iridescent blue-green circles that resemble eyes and are thought to startle predators or misdirect attacks away from the animal's actual eyes and brain. Part 9. The genetic frontier: what octopuses mean for science and for us. The night is deep and quiet now. There's nothing left to do but float in the warm dark and let these last thoughts settle gently. Fact number 97. The octopus genome is, by the standards of molecular biology, extraordinary. When scientists sequenced the genome of Octopus bimaculoides in 2015, they were prepared for differences from vertebrate genomes. but the scale of what they found exceeded expectations. The octopus genome is massively rearranged compared to other mollusks, as if the entire genome had been shuffled and reassembled in a new order, with large genomic regions reshuffled relative to their positions in related species. This scrambled architecture is not random damage. It is associated with massive expansions of gene families critically involved in brain development and neural function. Two families in particular caught the researchers' attention: the proto-cadherin genes, which regulate how neurons connect to form circuits during brain development, and the C2H2 zinc finger transcription factors, which regulate how genes are expressed in neural tissue. In humans and vertebrates, both these gene families are extremely large, much larger than in most invertebrates. Scientists had believed this expansion was a uniquely vertebrate innovation, perhaps contributing to the evolution of complex vertebrate brains. But octopuses have independently expanded both families to sizes comparable to vertebrates. The same molecular tools that may underlie vertebrate brain complexity evolved separately from scratch in an octopus lineage. Fact number 98. The RNA editing phenomenon in octopuses and other coleoid cephalopods deserves its own slow contemplation, because it represents something genuinely unusual in the history of molecular biology. In most animals, including humans, genetic information flows in one direction. DNA stores the instructions, RNA copies those instructions, and proteins are built from those copies. The information in RNA very faithfully reflects the information in DNA. Mutations happen at the DNA level and are passed on to offspring. This is the central dogma of molecular biology. Coleoid cephalopods, octopuses, squid, and cuttlefish do something that very few other animals do to any significant degree. They edit their RNA messages after they have been transcribed from DNA, changing the information before it is used to make proteins. This process, called adenosine to inosine RNA editing, can alter the amino acid sequence of the resulting protein, sometimes dramatically changing its function. Humans have about 20,000 genes, and fewer than 100 conserved RNA editing sites that alter protein function. Squid, which also have about 20,000 genes, have at least 11,000 active RNA editing sites affecting their proteomes. The extent of RNA editing in cephalopods is without parallel in any other known animal group. Fact number 99. The most heavily edited RNAs in the octopus are those coding for key neural proteins, the proteins that determine how neurons fire, how synapses transmit signals, how the nervous system operates at the most fundamental level. By editing these proteins, the octopus can fine-tune its neural function without changing its DNA. It can, in a sense, update its neural operating system through experience and environment, with editing patterns that respond to factors like temperature, season, and perhaps even learning. This may contribute directly to the remarkable behavioral flexibility and learning capacity that we observe. Rather than being constrained by a fixed genetic code, the octopus's nervous system may be dynamically modified at the molecular level, allowing rapid adaptation at a timescale that genetic evolution simply cannot match. Fact number 100. And here we arrive at the final fact, perhaps the most quietly significant of all. The intelligence of the octopus evolved completely independently of the intelligence of vertebrates, the last common ancestor that octopuses share with us, with humans, with dogs, with crows, with dolphins, lived perhaps 550 to 600 million years ago. It was a simple flatworm-like creature with no eyes, no complex nervous system, no real brain, Since that ancient parting, two completely separate lineages have followed two completely different paths, and both have independently arrived at complex, flexible, generative intelligence. The octopus did not learn from watching us. It arrived at intelligence through entirely different evolutionary pressures, using entirely different molecular tools, building entirely different neural architectures, and yet it reaches toward the world with something that looks from where we sit remarkably like curiosity. This tells us something profound. Intelligence is not a single invention that happened once in one lineage and spread. It is a solution that evolution finds again and again wherever the circumstances demand it. Wherever there is a complex enough environment, a sufficient enough challenge, a nervous system willing to invest in flexibility over rigidity, intelligence emerges. It emerged in vertebrates, it emerged in corvids, it emerged in cetaceans, and it emerged quietly and independently in the deep ocean, in a soft-bodied, 8-armed, blue-blooded animal with 9 brains and 3 hearts that has been there, in the dark water, thinking its own thoughts, for hundreds of millions of years before we ever arrived to notice. The octopus is out there right now. In the cold water off the coast of Japan, a giant Pacific octopus is tucking herself deeper into a rocky den, her eggs hanging in pale strands above her. In the coral gardens of Indonesia, a veined octopus is carefully cleaning a coconut shell for future use. In the shallow tide pools of Australia, a blue-ringed octopus is resting in a crevice, its rings dimmed and quiet. In the deep-sea darkness, a Dumbo octopus is drifting on gentle fin beats through water so cold and dark that no sunlight has ever touched it. In an aquarium somewhere, an octopus is studying the latch on its tank, systematically working through the possible configurations, patient and precise and unhurried. They don't know we're watching. They don't know we're thinking about them, marveling at them, staying up late in the soft darkness trying to understand them. They're just living fully, completely, with all the intelligence and all the grace that hundreds of millions of years of evolution have given them. And somehow that makes them even more extraordinary. Thank you for spending this time with me and with the octopus tonight. I hope some of these 100 facts stay with you, drifting in and out of sleep like lights below the surface. If you enjoyed this video, please take a moment to give it a like and consider subscribing to Science Lullaby so you never miss a new episode. Every like and subscribe genuinely helps this channel reach more curious minds who love falling asleep to science. I'm so grateful you're here. Sleep well, dream of the ocean, and I'll meet you in the dark water next time.